Welcome to Leading with Faith, a podcast where we explore faith, leadership, and the journey that connects them. I'm Kristi Kirk, and I serve as president of Concordia University, Texas, and I'm excited to welcome you to this conversation today. I pray that through these conversations, you are challenged to lead with faith in your own vocational callings. Today, I'm very excited to spend some time with two old friends, people I've done a lot of life with, and both alumni of Concordia University, Texas. So why don't you introduce yourselves for our audience and tell us your vocation journey as well as your connection to Concordia. Kristin?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah, my name is Kristin McMinn. I graduated from Concordia in 2000, so old campus, with a degree in communication. And I am the vice president of marketing for Pluckers, which is a regional, I guess, Texas and Louisiana chain of restaurants. We have 32 locations right now. When I started, we had 4. So I've been almost 20 years there. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love my job. I'm so lucky I get to go to a job every day that I love. So not everybody could say that. I know that for sure. So I'm very blessed.
What a blessing it is when your vocational work is also a lot of fun.
Exactly.
And Amanda makes things fun wherever she goes. So tell us your story, Amanda.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Amanda Keeter. I am the director of nonprofits at Central Texas Community Foundation. But my journey has been one of seeking vocation. And I really learned that word really through my Concordia journey. I have felt a calling ever since I can remember. And I think following that has been just trying to listen to the pulse of where God's leading. And so it's led into nonprofit work. And I have enjoyed about 20 years now at different nonprofits and executive leadership now. And so I'm just loving that work. But I do love that part of my journey included working at Concordia, at my alma mater. And that was some really meaningful work. It's where Kristin and I really became close friends. And of course, getting to know you even better. So loved my time there and loving what I'm doing now. So,
you know what I love about the three of us and our own vocational paths is Kristin and I more similar, sort of one institution mostly for much of our career. Amanda, you've moved around, but all with that same sense of calling.
Yeah.
And God uses both paths really to make a difference in the lives of people, in lives of institutions. And you've had this theme running through yours. While it's been at different institutions, there's been this real theme. How do you describe that theme of what you've done and what you're...
Yeah, and it's funny because I think the Lord plants words in our heart, right? And so there's times where you get restless and there's waiting and you're figuring out where's the landing, right? And the landing is kind of in those moments. I think the Lord's been speaking to me over time, abide, just waiting. And sometimes, you think, oh, that just means waiting. And I think sometimes that's really more of I talk about it like being like when you're a kid and you're standing in the ocean and the waves are pulling at you in different directions and yet you stay remaining in the Lord. And so I think that that's been just listening to an attunement of the Spirit as He has led my journey from here to there. But even more so lately, just surrender. And I think that has given me such joy and contentment knowing that His kingdom work is in the here and now. It's not necessarily, like I leave the impact to Him, right?
For sure.
And so I think that that's something specifically I got to really dive into in my time at Concordia and just really seeing that sense of vocation, not just in my path of like what I do during the day, but in all those hats that I wear. I think that's something that I really picked up from the Lutheran traditions while I've been a part of that team.
That's one of the things I love about you so much is that you are always like listening to what God's telling you. I think you're so great at that.
Thank you.
I absolutely love that. Yeah.
It's been lovely.
And I bet you are too, Kristin, right? It's different. And I think for those of us who have been at an institution for a long time, there's still a path of listening to God, right?
For sure.
What are you calling me to do right now? What are you saying to me in my life right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Talk about how you've brought that kind of faith experience into a very secular business.
It's funny you say that. When I was at Concordia, at the time, there were, a lot of people studying to be church workers. Most of my friends were studying to be either teachers or pastors. And, there was a lot of pressure there. My dad is retired now, but was a pastor. And my mom was a Lutheran school teacher. And, I that was not for me. It just I'm not meant. I have a 3-year-old, and that is plenty as far as kids.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to be a pastor. So I think one of the things that I really took from Concordia is that you need Christian leaders in a secular world.
Absolutely.
And no matter what you're doing, you can be a shining example of God's love.
Yeah.
And I've had so many times in my career where I really felt like I could be that bright light in some darkness.
Yeah.
I've had employees who have really struggled with either substance abuse or other things, and just being able to, help them in a way that maybe others aren't able to.
Yeah.
And I have some wonderful Christian friends at my workplace, and, I'm surrounded by wonderful people. I absolutely love where I work, and my bosses are fantastic. I wouldn't be working there for 20 years if I didn't love it,
Right. Yeah.
But I think, just being able to be a Christian leader in a place that's not, it's a secular place, I think is just such a blessing and a calling for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Talk about, you've hinted at this a little bit. Can you talk about specific times or instances when your faith really impacted a particular decision or a particular conversation or something you had to do at work?
Yeah. I really think that there's opportunity for you to really share, who you are and your faith, and, what helps you get through certain moments. And, as I said, I had an employee who really was struggling with some substance abuse issues. And in addition to that, also just wasn't taking care of himself. And, we ended up taking him to the emergency room, and, he ended up going to rehab, and we kept his job, and we kept him, we really worked with him. And I think in another place, people are more about production. What are you producing for me? And you're not producing for me, then move on, and we're going to hire somebody to replace you. And that, it's unfortunate that you're going through such a tough time. And I really feel like there are moments like that I can see throughout my career where I feel like God placed me there to really help guide people and to be understanding, and maybe less of a, what have you done for me lately, and what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that servant heart. And,
Yeah.
one of Concordia's values is caring for people. And it really is true when you understand God's love for humankind and for humans individually, right? How it does impact the work when you engage with them, right? They are not just cogs in a machine. They are people with dignity created by God, uniquely created by God with their own vocation, right? And it just changes how you interact with them. And it doesn't mean you don't have to make hard decisions. It doesn't mean you don't disagree. It doesn't mean things are perfect. But yeah, you look at people with different eyes.
That's not to say that, if things hadn't turned around that we would have had to make these hard decisions, but they did. And, I think being able to share where your strength comes from and what keeps you grounded and what keeps you focused, I think is such a blessing. And, like I said, I just really feel so strongly that, their church work is so important. And obviously we need more church workers, but I also think we need Christian leaders. If you just look at the world right now, there's so much division and hate and vitriol, and I just think being someone who is the opposite of that is just so important.
Absolutely. Get to be a witness in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How for you, Amanda? Talk about that kind of faith shaping your work, mostly in nonprofits.
It's been mostly in nonprofits, mostly in faith-based nonprofits. This is my first time to kind of step outside of that. The mission itself is not faith-based, but I think that, it's been interesting to in my young career, there was kind of this what's next and this anticipation of the things you'll accomplish and stuff. And I think that the Lord has just revealed for me over time a sense of contributing to others' journeys, of getting kind of a third way. It's not about climbing the ladder anymore. It's not about those things. It's I think being faithful in the moments that you're given, and in those ways, He's taken me some places I never could have climbed a ladder and scaled a mountain to get to. Right? Like I think that. There have been times when in my young career, I was an office manager for an international nonprofit, and we did projects with the State Department. And 11 weeks before the project manager quit, and then 4 weeks before, my boss had a brain tumor and had to have emergency surgery. So at 22, I went to the Republic of Tajikistan with the State Department. Like, there's those sorts of things that, like, if I was trying to finesse and find my way into these positions, and God has been so faithful time and time again that I just think, when you abide in Him, the path is His, and I think that y'all talked about this a little bit earlier, but that identity, right? My Creator knows my identity better than I do. So when I submit myself to, hey, where are we going today? What are we going to do? Who do I know? Who am I kind to? Who do I show compassion to? And then I trust the path to Him, and Him. I think about Moses, right? And like you get backed up to a sea and you see no way forward, and then He splits the sea, right? Or He opens those iron doors. Like He's going to create the path I cannot, and I don't even see it coming. And so I think there's so much in that journey, in faith, in leadership, to be just ready for that moment, but also content with kind of the people and the circumstances that we're in.
Yeah, I think one of the things God has worked on me lately, and you go through seasons, but one of the prayers in my heart as I walk into campus most mornings is, God, who do you want me to interact with today, right? Make that very clear. Who I need to have a conversation with, who I need to smile at, who I need to just be present with, and just being open to the leading of that, what that might be. And that sometimes is very different than my own agenda for the day, right? Surrendering.
Surrendering what Outlook says, right?
Right. Yes, Outlook. So maybe you've both talked about this a little bit, but Amanda, you used that word surrender. Talk about times when you've really felt God's presence and God's leading in a particular decision, and had to kind of surrender to that.
Yeah, there's been times where with a sense of calling, it hasn't been easy, and I would say even just as a female, because if I was a man, then I think it would be much more clear that I would just go the path of, like, I'm going to pursue becoming a pastor or different things like that. So in some ways, and now I consider it almost a gift, right, that I've had to have an attunement to the Spirit and say, like, okay, decision by decision, I'm having to wait for your leading. I'm going to have to rest in you, right? And there's times even now where, you start a project, and maybe, a funder changes decisions, and you're waiting on the next couple of months to see what's God going to do here? What's He going to prepare? What's the path? And there's a peace that I can't explain, but I know He's got me, and does He got me in the way that I perceive? Like, it's just being held. And so I would say that's kind of, without being too specific, where I'm at right now.
I love it. How about for you, Kristin? Anything more to add in that area?
I mean, better than the way she said it, no. I feel God directing me really in everything I do, to be honest with you. Whether it's with my family or with my friends or with, at work. I think, one of the things that you talked about was being a woman and being a leader. And sometimes that can be very difficult, tightrope to walk. I think there's a tendency for people to look at strong women leaders and assign a certain word to them. They're, it's
not seen in the
without
same way.
Without saying the word. And I think, that's one of the ways I've really been able to kind of flourish at my job. Like I said, we have 3 amazing owners, and of our department heads, I think that there are more than 70% of us are women, which I think is amazing. And, in my department, I've got, both men and women, but I think I've been able to kind of coach the women on my team and how to be strong leaders without being assigned a certain
Kristin, I found myself so grateful to have come of age and to grown up in the time that I did, because I do think that has changed, right? I look at women who I greatly respect and admire who were a generation ahead of me, and the things that they had to endure.
That was a different path.
And it certainly has its own challenges today, being a woman in leadership, but it's different than it was, and I'm grateful for those who forged the path ahead of us.
Absolutely.
And committed then to also forging the path for those that are coming behind us. us, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, and I think about, you mentioned this we had that women's luncheon, and you mentioned, some of the women that were there who were, our professors or people that we admired so much at Concordia. And, I learned that from people like Suzanne Miller or, Dr. Tynert or Dr. Staten. And there were so many, amazing women doing amazing things at Concordia. And,
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And I thank God for those women who were even more challenged in stepping into leadership roles than I think we are today. So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
How about for you, Amanda? Talk about that kind of women's issue and women's leadership. How does that show itself up in your world?
Yeah, I think that for me, there was an expectation as a woman to show up a certain kind of polished. And then there's also been an expectation to be the counterpart that I've seen of my male colleagues, right? And in many cases, that's just not who I'm created to be. Right? And so a lot of times it's been drawing on those influences of other women that have gone before me, that are coming alongside me, and then leaning into, like, I've got to be true to who I am. And so how do I listen well? How do I still laugh like I normally laugh and not temper it because somebody thinks it's, you just get so much feedback as a woman growing up. I've gotten feedback about my laugh, and so that's...
I love your laugh.
Thank you, guys. But it's funny that even somebody would feel like they need to give that kind of feedback. They would never done that otherwise, right? And so I think that there's those things where, it's been a challenge. I've, in many ways, felt like, there's been a few women that I've been able to pull upon the influences of, but in many ways, I feel like I've had to create my own path. Yeah. And I think it's so important. Not only am I doing that now for the women that are coming behind me, but also, I got an experience to serve as an adjunct professor while I was at Concordia. And I fell in love with the students. And there are young men and women who have so much opportunity ahead of them, but they need someone to walk alongside them. And I feel like that's what Concordia is doing today. It's an amazing mission field. And it's no longer just for me, like, what are we looking to do to create women in business opportunities? It's like, how do we get more seats at the table? And I think Concordia is doing that, like, needle through the thread, the thread through the needle, in such a beautiful way that honors faith and opens doors just like Jesus did, And so I feel like for me, we take what we learn because, yes, the women before us, I think, had a different hill to climb. It hasn't been easy either. And now we look at it and say, who can we hold the door open for?
Absolutely.
I
love that.
Yeah.
There's so much in that you just said, Amanda, that I'd love to just sort of riff off of. Let me start with that piece of authenticity. I think, again, our faith drives this, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I think one of the things God has taught me that's one of these kind of no-duh things is that everything you read in, like, business principle books, like How to Be a Good Leader, is God ordained and God given, and well, of course it is, because it's excellence, and that is God ordained and God driven. And so a lot of what you read in leadership is about authentic leadership, right? Bringing your whole self to a place. And yes, because that is who God created us to be. That's how God designed us to be. So we shouldn't temper our laughs. We shouldn't temper our own personality. Part of my story in the last several months of my vocational discernment around stepping into this role as president. Really had to do some wrestling with that can I be authentic in this role? I am so grateful for the leadership and mentorship of Don Christian in my own life and in Concordia's experience, but I'm very different than him, right? And so if that's the vision of a president, then that's not me. Right. But can I be authentic in my own self and my own skin and lead like God created me to lead? Yes. And will people value that and accept that?
Yeah,
right.
Those are great questions.
How about for you, Kristin? That authenticity, do you wrestle with that in your own work, or are you at a place where that's really just open?
Don't. Yeah, I really don't. I've just never wrestled with that in general. I can remember even as a kid, there were always the cliques, and I was just friends with everybody. You know what I mean? I just have always felt like like me or don't like me. This is who I am. And it's funny because, Sammy, my son, will ask me questions sometimes like, why are your eyes green? And I'm like, that's how God made me. Or why, I just really feel like this is how God made me. And to temper it would be a disservice to him. This is how this is how he created me, and I'm comfortable with that and happy with that. And I surround myself with people who encourage that.
I remember that as for you as a student, Kristin. So, again, just friends with everybody, just true to who you are, and
take it or
very
leave it.
Likable. Yeah, you say that, but everybody likes you. So.
Well, it's such an asset now having you as the chair of the Alumni Council, because I think that's an opportunity, and I don't know that the audience knows, that we got to get to know each other much better, was my opportunity to work with alumni and yours at Concordia. And I just feel like the sense of our shared heart for belonging and creating a space for belonging.
Absolutely.
For all of the alumni. I think you are the best person to be in that seat, because you do create that just by being who you are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I just feel, I look back at my time at Concordia, and my best, closest friends, they're not even friends, they're family.
Right. Yeah.
Still to this day. And I know that everyone else has that experience when they're at Concordia. And, I just am always looking for ways that we can continue that.
Yeah.
And so however that looks, whether it's just, getting together, whether it's volunteering, whether it's donating, in whatever form or fashion that looks like, I just feel so strongly that, why wouldn't you want to maintain that connection to your university, to the people that helped shape you, to your family?
Well, I think so many people want to, make an impact. And one thing that I saw firsthand being at Concordia is you've got this diversity of students coming from every which way, and they all converge, and they're here for the here and now at such an inflection point in their lives, and then they go out and they change the world. So staying involved at Concordia, it's a reason why I have, over 10, I got my MBA 2010 to 2012. That was my journey here. And then to come back and be a part of it with you is like these young people, we get to be a part of their journey in 100-year, tradition that's been around for a long time, and to be the ones that keep that mission moving forward, whatever way it is, whether it's, mentoring or being an advocate for the mission, has been really meaningful to me and a lot of the people I know that we've had the chance to work with.
Yeah.
I love that, because you're both painting this continuum of experience at Concordia, right? The people who influenced us as students and leaders, and then the students that we get to influence and move on with. Talk about that continuum a little bit. First of all, whether at Concordia or elsewhere, can you point to someone who's really shaped your faith and influenced your leadership, and particularly your leading by faith? And then what is your wish for the future? What would you say to students or to others who might be looking to re-engage in their alma mater, Kristin, or kind of think about that continuum?
Yeah. Well, I know that, our roots give us so much of who we are. And so I've got some amazing grandmothers that have been, foundations of faith. And so I'm very grateful for that. I have a granny who was just... you can't imagine the stories that are now told, of this woman and what she did, but her faith gives me such a grounding, and it's so cool to look back and say that's my heritage, and I am somebody's heritage, right? And the life I'm living provides that extension of that story. And so in being in the here and now, right, with the students, I was talking with y'all a little bit before, but yesterday I got to meet with a former student who we just continue these conversations. There are multiple students that I still meet with, get together for boba tea or whatever, and just to be a part of their lives. It's incredible to know the impact you can have when you live with people and walk alongside them and open doors for them that they don't know that they're going to need, to open, or the relationships that they can create. And I find so much joy in that and in being with these students. And I'm excited about just in the future and in my career. We're going to be launching the Center for Nonprofit Growth, and it's going to be in 30 counties. We're going to be building into the capacity building and sustainability of nonprofits. And what can this mean for Concordia students, right? For our communities. It's something I'm really excited about for the future.
Yeah, I love that. I think those of us who lead with faith and who really have taken what we learned at Concordia
Yeah.
and brought into the world. What you're talking about, Amanda, is that we influence people's both secular lives, temporal lives, and eternal lives,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And I think that's what so many of us do when we lead by faith, because Kristin, the work you do, again, mostly secular. You're providing meals for people and fun
Selling
and
chi-
experience,
selling chicken wings.
selling chicken. But in that, you are impacting people's eternal lives by being in relationship with them, by sharing the gospel as you can and when it makes sense. And,
Sure, yeah.
And so talk about that continuum question for you.
Yeah, I think, when you're talking about like influencing people and sharing your faith, I think there have been, numerous people over my career that I've met who, have maybe either had a falling out with God, had a falling out with the church, had a bad experience in some form or fashion. And, I think being able to be a safe place for them to, talk about what their experience was and really show them that, that's not who God is, and that's not what his hope is for you, and where that hope lies it's just such a blessing to be able to do that. And I'm thinking through all these people. I could just name names, and just there are so many people that I think it's really been even just. I've had people say to me, even the fact that, you ask about your weekend, oh, what'd you do yesterday? Well, I went to church and then we did blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that's just
your witness in the world.
Even just saying that I think has been impactful. And, I think you can be a witness in very small ways that makes a really big impact. You don't have to be, wearing your Jesus sign and ringing a bell. I think just being just being a good Christian witness and talking about your faith when it's appropriate and just being a good example of Jesus' love, I think, is the best way you can do it. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Loving God, serving neighbor. That's
Right.
what we
There it
do,
is.
Exactly.
There it is.
Real quick, and I hate this question because for me the answer is always too many, but one Concordia professor or staff that you would highlight as sort of really helped you understand this vocation of living by faith, wherever your careers take you. Got one you would name? So hard.
There's two that were really influential and that I kept relationships with. And so Dr. Linda Ford, who helped develop the MBA program, was just so meaningful to me. And we walked through life together for many years, doing coffees and things. And then, of course, Dr. Kristin. He was somebody that at that time when I was getting that feedback that I needed a little more polish or I needed to fit a certain mold, the way he would just talk in class with that mug in his hand, stick his foot up on a stool, and let out this beautiful laugh that just carried a joy, showed me that there's a way to be an authentic leader, to be yourself, and to challenge. I remember one of the lessons specifically he taught me was when we were looking at our community, right, and leadership in community, and that the people that are for you, that's a good audience. There's the people that are kind of meh, and then there's the people that are against you. And to look at the people that are against you is they have passion for the issue. Yeah. And so this is not the enemy, right? It's and I think I've learned that this is really part of the Lutheran doctrine is like this dialogue, this engagement. We're not writing people off. Like you see the passion for them and you find value in that, right? And so there's so many things that he taught me, but that's one of them.
For me, I guess I would honestly say Dean Driscoll.
Oh, I love it.
I actually had him for, I don't even remember what that class was called, the freshman.
The master students. I also had him for the master student.
And, on I have to tell this story, actually. He would love that I tell this. So, my very first, I was there for freshman orientation, and I lived out of state, and so we were there right before school started. And my parents, of course, drove me, and they sent us away to go take like a math test or something, and Dean talked to all the parents, and he was like, listen, your kid will get in trouble. They'll be in my office. You have to let them, whatever. And my dad stayed all the way to the end, and he walked up there and he goes, not my kid. Oh, and Dean came to me and he goes, so you're going to be my trouble. I was like, what did I do? But he was such an influence on me, and I worked closely with him. I was an RA and I was student body president, and so I did a lot with him. And when I graduated college and officially moved here and had a car here, he took me to his mechanic, and he said, "This is like my daughter. You take care of her." And he just was such a wonderful influence on me and on my life. And still to this day, every time I see him, I'm just like giddy.
I agree. It's such a humble, faithful leader. Right? Just one of those people you just want to be like.
Absolutely,
for sure. I love it.
That's beautiful.
Good. Well, I think we're out of time. We could talk all day. This has been fun, y'all. But one closing piece of advice or words of encouragement you would give to others, maybe students, maybe others who are listening, maybe alumni who are just looking to lead with faith in their own lives.
I'll go first. I think when it comes to students, I would say just take advantage of every opportunity that's given to you, and like we've been talking about, be your authentic self, because God's going to lead your path. Yeah. And so just listening to that and really, really taking advantage of that, I think is my advice. Yeah. I think when it comes to alumni, it's get involved. I put on my alumni council hat here and just say, the more people that we can get giving back to Concordia, and whatever that looks like, whether it's mentoring students or, volunteering or donating to, whatever it might be, a food pantry or even, monetary donations. I just think like even the connection brings God's light out. Yeah. And we've all scattered, but coming back together and just kind of recentering and then going back out again, I think is a beautiful thing.
I love that. I remember Dr. Paul Puffy talked about that Concordia was his mission field. That I think at a younger age he thought about he was going to do missions, and every year God brought him a new mission field. And I see that as so much at Concordia. That you have these students that come in. So I think my advice to them is very similar to you, right? Is there's so much about identity right now. And I think that even as a young person, I was trying to figure out, like, what's my identity? What am I good at? What are my skill sets? How am I going to do this or that? And just resting in that the one who created you can give you the best insight on who that is, what that is. You feel so much pressure when you're out, trying to start your career, and you're jumping the rungs on the ladder, and you're trying to look for that next position, and just to take that pressure off. And it's not about the grinding it out and that sort of thing. It's this resting in the Lord and just being present and waiting in attunement to Him, because He's gonna unfold it. And I think it's so hard in this rat race and this keeping up and this slaying the day and everything like that you surrender the day, right? You find it little by little in that, and to truly trust in that, the door's open. I can say it time and time and again.
I think what you're saying is like, it's not about you. It's not about what you accomplish, how you succeed, because really you should be reflecting Jesus.
And you'll find the most fulfillment in that.
Exactly.
Meaningful work, as we call it at
Exactly.
Concordia, right?
Meaningful work.
The adventure of faith, learning, and life-changing experiences that leads to meaningful work. Not work, but meaningful work. Work that matters to you and to the people you serve. Y'all, this has been so much fun. Thank you for taking time to engage in this conversation with me. Thank you for all that you do for Concordia, your alma mater. We deeply, deeply appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in to Leading with Faith. If you enjoyed these conversations, we invite you to share this with others who might be inspired by these leadership insights. Until next time, continue to lead with faith.